Hello and welcome back to a new tuning video. So if you are tuning into this video on YouTube, then this is the first tuning video you'll ever see. If you want to see more tuning videos just like this, where there's valuable information on how to tune your car, you should join the Boundless Racing Inner Circle, where you can have a multitude of videos on how to tune your car, as well as analyzing your car data, how to build your own personal brand, and how to start reaching out to different companies to start building relationships. So with that, let's get started. And today we're going to be talking about camber. As you could see, we're going to be moving front to back, as the front is a lot more complicated than the rear, but we are going to be talking about camber. And the first two topics we're going to talk about are a little more nuanced than just, tire size and, oh, you should run more or whatever. We're going to talk about the reason why you should run camber. So the first being is KPI. So KPI is the angle of your lower ball joint to your coilover. If you're on a front end suspension setup such as an S chassis, which is this car, if it's double wishbone, like say a Corvette, it's going to be your lower ball joint to your upper ball joint. That is your KPI angle. The next thing is your caster. So the KPI angle is from your inner wheel well, from, you can see, coming from the front, and then your caster is from the side. So same angle, your lower ball joint to the suspension point, to the coilover, or if it's double wishbone, lower ball joint to upper ball joint. Now, these two together create what we call, your rotation and the contact patch of your leading tire. Now, we have some examples of the difference between a high caster setup and a lower caster setup. So, as we could see here, this is a high caster setup, a very high caster setup, very similar to this car. It's the same driver, it's Vaughn, right? So that leading tire is flopping over in a very positive way, right? Lots of positive angle when we have a lot of caster. Now, this is the same Mustang, right? Same S550, but with this setup, it is a lower caster setup. So as you can see, the car actually has more angle, but instead of flopping over like this, the contact patch of lean tire at angle is a lot more shallow. So the caster and the KPI combined together create things like this. So lower caster, you have a lot better of a contact patch. Higher caster, you have more of a positive contact patch. Now, that does matter and it doesn't really matter. It really depends how you look at it, because you can use camber to your advantage in order to increase the amount of front camber you have on your leading tire or decrease it. So let's get into those tips and tricks, which is very straightforward, right? Before we do, let's just talk about why I say camber matters, right? If we run no camber in the front of the car, right? So take this older Mustang, for example. If we were to run, say, like, not a lot of camber, we could give a rough number, let's say -3 degrees of camber. At this angle the car is at currently, which is about 50 degrees of angle, the car's tire, the leading tire, which is this right front wheel, would probably be like this. It would be insane, right? Because of how much caster and KPI there is within this car. Now, if we look at this car, which is the newer car, right? I think this is the 2023 car, I want to say. Anyway, this has a lot less caster. If we were to run it at the same -3 degrees of -3 degrees of camber, my bad, it would not be so much like this, but it'd be more so like this when it comes to that leading front wheel, right? This is at a decent bit of angle. This is about, I'd say, 60, 70 degrees of angle the car is at, right? And the car's contact patch is relatively flat, which is good. So let's add camber to the front of it and let's show what happens. So first things first, let's talk about some front camber tips and tricks. So off the rip, front camber is always going to be negative. If you add positive front camber, I genuinely don't know what you're doing, because that's not going to help you at all. Not going to lie. You need negative camber in order to help with that leading wheel. If you add positive, Do you just want your car to be undrivable? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. This isn't, Forza 4 or Forza 5, right? This is, we're talking about some real life implications here, brother. Okay, so front camber always is going to go negative. Next thing, caster is really how you're going to determine how much camber. Well, caster and your KPI, right? And we'll get into that shortly. Also, car, suspension type, wheel size, etc. So, say you drive a S15 with -6 degrees caster, and you run a 245 in the front, right? So it's going to be different if you ran the same setup and then you ran a 275 in the front. The reason being is your contact patch is a lot bigger or smaller. So usually with the bigger tire, guess what? When you have less camber and you have more of this, right, your contact patch is going to be bigger. So you could hypothetically run less camber and you'll still have a similar contact patch as you would with less camber, right? I mean, with a smaller front tire. That's what I meant, with more camber. But everything is determining off of that. And a lot of implications when it comes to proper setup of your front camber is determined off of these things. You have to set it up to have a neutral contact patch at your ideal angle. So for me, it's anywhere from 50 to 55 degrees is that neutral contact patch, if that makes sense. And you're going to run more camber than you think if you run at high angle. So for me, I feel like I like to run a decent bit of angle when I'm driving. I don't like to be very shallow when I'm driving around, right? I like to hold a decent bit of angle. And when you run a lot of angle in the car, the flatter the lead tire's contact patches, the faster you're going to go. Because the more front grip you're going to have, and you're going to go, right? If you're like this, guess what? You're going to have less front grip, which is not ideal, right? So for example, my VDC Nissan Z, I run -7.2 degrees of camber in the front, and my caster is -4.5, right? So -4.5 degrees of caster, and then so I run -7.2 degrees of camber. What this does is when I'm at the angle I want to be at, so say 50 degrees, my front end, my front leading wheel is basically flat. So one, it's going to be faster, and two, it's going to drive a lot easier. Because if I have this flop, right, over on my front leading tire, it's going to drive a little funky because the tire is rolling onto itself because it's like this. Instead of it being flat, like how a tire should be, right? That's how tires are designed. They're round on flat. Makes sense. If it's, angled, it's not going to be great. And it's the same thing. Think about it if you've ever driven, even in the game, right? Even in a Assetto, if you've driven a cambered car, significantly cambered, right? It's like -6 degrees of camber in the front, and you try to brake, you're not going to brake very well because that contact patch with such, low amounts of, contact patch because of how much camber you're running, you're not going to be able to brake very well, right? Your front end is basically non-existent because your contact patch is so little. And think about it, when you move this and you start to apply angle, right, it becomes flatter and it begins to roll over. Same thing applies, right? If you're drifting and you have a high contact patch, so your tire's flat, guess what? Brake, left foot brake, you're trying to slow down, you're going to slow down a lot better, right? If your tire's rolling over, you're probably going to spin out because if you lock the front, etc., a lot of different things with that, right? So in my Nissan Z in VDC, I'm literally giving you my camber settings. So if you run a Z, don't beat me, okay? That's the one thing you can't do. I run -4.5 cast, or my bad. I run 4.5 caster in the front. I run -7.5 degrees of camber. I might mess up. This is a one take sort of thing. It's currently 12:02 a.m., so I'm a little tired. You got to pump out the recordings. You feel me? So the next couple things. At my ideal angle, I'm at a neutral contact patch. The more camber also helps with rotating the car. So that's another thing, right? If you're rolling over, the car may shoot this way. That's like very violent. If you're running like barely any camber, if you hit high angle, your car's gonna want to shoot sideways because it doesn't have that contact patch, right? It doesn't want to have like a normal like slide. It'll have too much side like step, if that makes sense, right? So more camber helps with the rotating of cars. If you're on a tighter track, usually I like to run a little more camber, just because I'm running on more angle, right? And it makes the front end a lot more snappy, if that makes sense. That has to do with another thing as well, but we'll get into that in another video. But your front camber, more of it helps with rotating the car, but more so the point of it is to have your leading tire have a neutral contact patch. It's the biggest thing. I'm going to show you how in Assetto Corsa here shortly. It's very simple to figure out. So let's get into it here. Rear camber tips and tricks, baby. This is where the fun stuff happens. Not really. It's pretty straightforward. 99% of the time, rear camber is going to be positive, right? So front, negative, rear, positive. Exactly. So it's determined by how much squat your rear end has, right? So that goes car to car. S chassis, for example, they have a decent bit of squat. They don't have a ton of anti-squat, which, if you don't know, if you ever look at an RTR, pull the handbrake, the rear end goes, right? And when they're driving, right, it might pop up, or when they pull the handbrake, my bad, the car dips down, right? And then when they drive, it pushes up, right? Anti-squat, making the car not squat. Make sense? Cool. All right, so S chassis, for example, decent bit of squat in Assetto Corsa. So what that means is you're going to run a decent bit of positive camber, right? I'd say like 0.5 is a good starting point. When it comes to the A90 Supra in Assetto Corsa, right, this thing has a lot of anti-squat. It does not squat in the rear. So when you set up the car and you're looking at your camber, you want to have a neutral camber, right? Zero, zilch, cero, if for all my Spanish-speaking friends out there, right? 0 degrees of camber. Or maybe negative if you're feeling spicy. Fun fact of the day, I'll add this in here. When you have negative camber in the rear, it helps a little bit with side bite, right? It helps the car dip, helps the car push, helps a little bit with your side bite. Do I recommend it though? Your contact patch goes down, but it does help a little bit with side bite. It's the same if you go positive. It also helps with side bite, right? It depends on which way you want to go, and it also depends on the car. You know, that could be, I could have that backwards, to be honest. Now that I'm thinking about it, it could be positive is side bite, and then negative is forward bite. I think I'm correct though. Correct me if in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm sorry if I am. It's one of those ways though. That's what I know. It's too late for this. Anyway, AC tip for both front and rear, use the suspension app. So if you go in your Python apps, if you type in suspension, it'll pull up the suspension app. And what that does is it shows your front and rear suspension. It shows your camber, your KPI, and when you turn the wheel, when you squat the car, when you accelerate, it could show essentially your wheel's contact patch with the ground and how much camber the wheel has. So if you have 0.9 in the rear, right? Say you have 0.9, I guess, and you squat and it becomes neutral, muy bien, right? What I would do in order to figure that out more thoroughly is have a run and have something in the background like NVIDIA screen recording software or OBS recording your driving to see how much camber you have and where the neutral spot is in your front leading tire or your rear end when you squat to see where it's at, right? And then go look back at it. I know it's a little bit of work. Boo-hoo. We're trying to be saucy with it out here, okay? So AC tip for both front and rear, use the suspension app to apply when the wheels has a neutral contact patch. Next thing, when driving, understand that some tracks have cambered corners, so you should run more camber on one side than the other. For example, OSW, big one, right? Got a big old bank, right? Seattle too, big old bank. You run more camber on a certain side. You can figure out which, right? I'm not going to tell you, right? You can't be spoon-fed everything. You got to figure that out, right? Goes for everyone. So when it comes to that sort of thing, one side's going to have more camber in order to neutral the contact patch on the bang, because that's the majority of the track. Or you cannot. I usually don't do it. It hasn't really hurt me or benefited me, but I know some people it does. So I wanted to throw that fun fact of the day in there. And overall, neutral equals better. If you can have more of a neutral contact patch, your tires will be able to get the maximum amount of grip. When it gets the maximum amount of grip, you could drift better because you'll be more stable. And when you drift better and you're more stable, more so you're faster. I could have just said you're more faster, but I wanted to be extra. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. To all my Inner Circle members, this is the only tuning video that's going to be out on YouTube. I might release more as time goes on, but this is the first one where both of them are going to be released at the same time. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. If you have anything you'd like to say, if there's any opinions you have, or if I messed up somewhere, which I'm pretty sure I did, especially talking about something here, I think in the last couple minutes I messed something up. So correct me down in the comments if you will. We're all open to just getting better. So leave them down in the comments. It'll help someone out. It'll help someone out as much as it will help me out. So leave all of your questions, your concerns, anything like that in the comments down below. And as I said before, if you found this video valuable, make sure to like and subscribe. Join Boundless Racing Inner Circle if you want more videos just like this, and how to build a personal brand, how to analyze car data, and how to start building company relationships, and weekly coaching calls with special guests, as well as weekly driving help sessions where we dedicate some time to help you with your driving, right? Very valuable group. Ton of people in there who are having a great time. So if you're not already, go ahead and join. But this will be the last bit of the intro. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.